On November 30th, 2022, something happened. It didn't make the evening news. There were no sirens, no emergency broadcasts, no world leaders gathered to make speeches. It was just a website, a simple text box on a screen waiting for someone to type something. And yet, that quiet moment would go on to change the world more than almost anything else in the 21st century. The website was called ChatGPT, and within 2 months, 100 million people were using it. It became the fastest growing consumer application in the history of the internet, faster than Instagram, faster than TikTok, faster than anything that had come before. But here's the thing that nobody fully understood at the time. ChatGPT wasn't the revolution, it was just the spark. What followed over the next 24 months was an explosion of artificial intelligence so rapid, so sweeping, and so deeply felt across every corner of human life that the world of early 2025 would have been almost unrecognizable to someone living in early 2023. This is that story. Chapter 1: The Quiet Beginning. To understand how we got here, we need to go back. Not very far, just a few years, but in the world of artificial intelligence, a few years might as well be a century. OpenAI was founded in 2015 as a research lab with a simple, almost idealistic mission to build artificial intelligence that benefits all of humanity. Its early backers included Elon Musk and Sam Altman, among others. At the time, AI was mostly an academic pursuit. It existed in research papers and university labs. It wasn't something ordinary people thought about. For years, OpenAI worked quietly. They published research. They built language models, GPT-1, then GPT-2, then GPT-3. Each one was bigger, more capable, and more surprising than the last. But they were tools for developers, for researchers, not for the public. Then, in early 2022, OpenAI developed something called InstructGPT, a model that had been fine-tuned with human feedback. Instead of just predicting the next word in a sentence, it could follow instructions. It could answer questions. It could have conversations. And on November 30th, 2022, they wrapped this technology in a simple chat interface and released it to the world for free. Pause, let this breathe. The response was immediate and overwhelming. People typed in questions and received answers that sounded human. They asked it to write essays, poems, code, business plans. They asked it to explain quantum physics to a 5-year-old. They asked it to write bedtime stories for their children. And it did all of these things, not perfectly, not always accurately, but convincingly enough that millions of people suddenly realized something that had only existed in science fiction was now sitting on their laptop screen. Within 5 days, ChatGPT had 1 million users. Within 2 months, it crossed 100 million. For context, it took Instagram 2.5 years to reach that number. TikTok took 9 months. The age of artificial intelligence had arrived, and it arrived not with a dramatic announcement, but with a blinking cursor and the quiet words, "How can I help you today?" Chapter 2: The Race Begins. When ChatGPT went viral, something interesting happened inside the world's largest technology companies. It was something close to panic. Google, the company that had arguably done more AI research than anyone else on the planet, suddenly found itself playing catch-up. For years, Google had been developing its own large language models, but they had been cautious. They were worried about accuracy, about safety, about the reputational risk of releasing something that might say the wrong thing. ChatGPT changed that calculation overnight. Internally, Google reportedly declared a code red. Within weeks, they began preparing their response. In February 2023, Google announced Bard, their own AI chatbot, but the launch was rocky. During a live demonstration, Bard made a factual error and Google's stock dropped by $100 billion in a single day. Meanwhile, Microsoft, which had invested billions in OpenAI, moved quickly to integrate ChatGPT into its search engine, Bing, and its Office suite. Suddenly, AI wasn't just a novelty. It was being embedded into the tools that hundreds of millions of people used every day for work. And then the floodgates opened. In March 2023, OpenAI released GPT-4, a dramatically more capable model that could understand images, write sophisticated code, and pass professional exams including the bar exam. The same month, Anthropic released Claude, a competing model built with a focus on safety and honesty. China's tech giants began developing their own models. Startups raised billions. Pause. By the summer of 2023, the landscape of technology had been completely reshaped. Every major company was racing to build, integrate, or respond to artificial intelligence. And the speed of this transformation was unlike anything the industry had ever seen. But this was only the beginning. Because while the tech companies were racing each other, something much larger was happening in the world outside Silicon Valley. Ordinary people, teachers, lawyers, writers, artists, doctors, students were beginning to realize that this technology was going to change their lives. Some were excited, many were afraid, and almost everyone was confused about what it all meant. Chapter 3: The Year Everything Accelerated. If 2023 was the year artificial intelligence introduced itself to the world, then 2024 was the year it moved in and started rearranging the furniture. The pace of development became almost impossible to follow. New models were being released every few weeks, each one more powerful than the last, each one capable of things that would have seemed impossible just months earlier. In February 2024, Google rebranded Bard to Gemini and released a new model that could process text, images, audio, and video all at once. A month later, Anthropic released Claude 3, a model that demonstrated something researchers called metacognitive reasoning. It appeared to be aware in some limited sense that it was being tested. Then in the same month, OpenAI previewed Sora, a model that could generate realistic video from nothing more than a text description. Type in a sentence describing a scene and Sora would produce a video that looked like it had been filmed by a professional crew. The implications were staggering. If anyone could create convincing video from text alone, what would happen to truth? Pause, let the question hang. Meanwhile, image generation had already transformed. Tools like Midjourney and DALL-E were producing images so realistic that experts struggled to tell them apart from photographs. In one widely cited study, researchers found that AI-generated faces of certain demographics were actually perceived as more realistic than genuine photographs. Think about that for a moment. The fake looked more real than the real. And it wasn't just images and video. AI was composing music. It was writing code that worked on the first try. It was diagnosing medical conditions from scans with accuracy that rivaled experienced doctors. It was translating languages in real time. It was designing molecules for new drugs. It was doing things that just 2 years earlier most experts believed were decades away. In May 2024, OpenAI released GPT-4o, the O standing for Omni, a model that could see, hear, and speak. You could have a voice conversation with it in real time. It could look at a photo you showed it and discuss what it saw. It could detect emotion in your voice and adjust its tone accordingly. The line between human and machine was becoming harder and harder to see. Music deepened slightly. By the end of 2024, ChatGPT had over 300 million weekly active users. It had become one of the most visited websites on the planet. But more importantly, it had changed how people thought about intelligence itself. If a machine could write a poem that moved you to tears, was it creative? If a machine could pass the bar exam, was it intelligent? If a machine could have a conversation that felt warm, thoughtful, and deeply personal, was it conscious? These weren't just philosophical questions anymore. They were questions that millions of people were asking themselves every day as they interacted with systems that felt eerily human. Chapter 4: The World Reacts. As artificial intelligence grew more powerful, the world didn't just watch in amazement, it also watched in fear. 2024 was the largest election year in human history. Over 70 countries held national elections. Nearly 4 billion people had the right to vote. And for the first time, artificial intelligence was a real factor in democratic processes around the world. The most dramatic case came from Romania, where the 2024 presidential election results were actually annulled after evidence emerged of AI-powered interference. Manipulated videos and deepfake content had been used to influence voters, very likely with foreign backing. In the United States, residents of New Hampshire received phone calls from what sounded exactly like President Joe Biden, urging them not to vote in the primary. The voice was entirely artificial, generated by AI. The Federal Communications Commission responded by banning robocalls containing AI-generated voices. The consultant behind the calls was indicted on criminal charges. In India, AI-generated deepfakes showed celebrities criticizing the Prime Minister and endorsing opposition candidates. In Slovakia, fake audio of a candidate discussing vote rigging went viral just days before an election. In the United Kingdom, a deepfake of London's mayor inflamed violent clashes between protesters. Pause. But elections were only one piece of the puzzle. The deeper anxiety was about something more personal: jobs. Throughout 2023 and 2024, reports began emerging of companies quietly replacing workers with AI systems. Customer service departments, content writing teams, data entry roles, translation services, graphic design firms. One by one, tasks that had been performed by humans for decades were being automated, not perfectly but cheaply and at scale. The entertainment industry was hit particularly hard. In 2023, Hollywood writers went on strike for nearly 5 months, with AI being one of the central issues. They fought for protections against studios using AI to generate scripts or to train AI models on their previous work without compensation. Artists faced similar challenges. Tools like Midjourney and Stable Diffusion had been trained on billions of images scraped from the internet, including the work of living artists who had never given permission. Lawsuits were filed. Debates raged about copyright, ownership, and the meaning of creativity in an age of machines. And then there were the scams. In February 2024, a finance worker at a multinational company in Hong Kong was tricked into transferring $25 million after participating in a video conference call. Every other person on that call, including the company's chief financial officer, was a deepfake. None of them were real. $25 million stolen by holograms. Let that settle. The technology that promised to help humanity was also being weaponized against it, and the pace of development meant that defenses were always one step behind. Chapter 5: The Machines Learn to Think. By late 2024 and into 2025, something shifted again. The models weren't just getting bigger, they were getting smarter in a qualitatively different way. In December 2024, OpenAI released a new type of model called O1. Unlike previous systems that generated responses as quickly as possible, O1 was designed to think. It would pause, it would reason through problems step by step, sometimes spending minutes considering a complex question before responding, and the results were remarkable. On advanced mathematics benchmarks, O1 achieved scores that placed it among the top competitors in international math Olympiads. On PhD-level science questions, it answered correctly nearly 90% of the time. This was followed by O3, announced shortly after, which scored 87.5% on the RKGI benchmark, a test specifically designed to measure the kind of flexible, general intelligence that AI systems had historically struggled with. Previous models had scored below 2% on its most challenging components. Pause. By the summer of 2025, ChatGPT had reached 700 million weekly active users. It had surpassed $3 billion in global consumer spending on mobile alone. It was being used in hospitals, law firms, schools, newsrooms, laboratories, and governments around the world. And the competition was fiercer than ever. Google's Gemini models were being integrated across the entire Google ecosystem. Anthropic's Claude had become the model of choice for many researchers and professionals. China's DeepSeek surprised the world by producing open-source models that rivaled the best Western systems at a fraction of the cost. New players were emerging from France, the UAE, and Southeast Asia. AI models could now write code autonomously, browse the web, make purchases, schedule meetings, analyze legal documents, and even operate computer interfaces, clicking buttons, filling forms, navigating websites just like a human would. In October 2025, OpenAI launched ChatGPT Atlas, a web browser with AI built directly into it, capable of taking actions on the user's behalf. It could book flights, order groceries, file complaints, research and compare products, all while you did something else. The assistant was becoming the agent, the tool was becoming the operator. And somewhere along the way, a question began to form in the minds of hundreds of millions of people. A question that had no easy answer. Where does the human end and the machine begin? Chapter 6: Where we are now. And so here we are, early 2026. It has been a little over 3 years since that quiet November evening when a simple chatbot appeared on the internet. In that time, the world has been transformed in ways that even the most optimistic or pessimistic predictions didn't fully capture. AI-generated content has overtaken the quantity of human-made content on the internet. More than half of the text, images, and video being produced online is now created or significantly assisted by machines. The information environment we inhabit is no longer primarily human. The models continue to improve, they reason better, they make fewer mistakes, they understand context, nuance, emotion, they can hold conversations that feel indistinguishable from talking to another person, they can write novels, compose symphonies, design buildings, and discover new scientific principles. And yet, for all of this power, the most important questions remain unanswered. Music becomes more reflective. Can we trust what we see online when any image, any video, any voice can be fabricated in seconds? How do we know what's real? What happens to the millions of people whose jobs are being automated, not in some distant future, but right now, today? Who owns the creativity of a machine that was trained on the work of thousands of human artists? Who profits? Who is accountable when it goes wrong? And perhaps the deepest question of all, if we build machines that can think, what does that say about what it means to be human? Rose. The story of artificial intelligence is not a story about technology. Not really, it's a story about us, about what we build, what we dream, what we fear, and what we choose to do with the tools we create. In just 2 years, a blinking cursor on a screen became one of the most powerful forces in human civilization. It changed how we work, how we learn, how we create, how we vote, how we trust, and how we understand ourselves. And the truth is, this is still the beginning. The AI that exists today will look primitive compared to what comes next. The changes we've seen so far are only the first ripples of a wave that hasn't fully arrived yet. So the question isn't whether AI will continue to change the world. The question is, what kind of world do we want it to become?